Now, I suppose I'm old-fashioned. You know, I thought teachers were meant to teach, make sure young people could read and write, do math, know some history, geography, perhaps a bit of economics and science, certainly. I don't think media studies is a real subject, and sociology should only be a graduate-level course. But this is nothing compared to what is going on today in many school boards. And for this information, by the way, I really have to thank the magnificent blog Blazing Cat Fur, the man who runs this goldmine of information concerning the insanity of the modern world and who monitors the toxins injected into the bloodstream of the body politic. He keeps a really close eye on the Toronto District School Board and its sinister war against the family. He reminds us about the board's trash publication entitled, and it's a cracker, this one, Challenging Homophobia and Heterosexism. I've seen the movie. And then he digs a bit deeper. The board has now posed the rhetorical question, should schools send notes or permission slips home before starting any classroom work about curricular issues that may involve discussions about discrimination and harassment? Because that's what school is about. And remember, this is very extreme and one-sided stuff, OK? And parents are the ones who raise children. I mean, for goodness sake, they are the children's parents. The answer, however, to this rhetorical question is quite chilling. Now, listen. No. The TDSB Equity Foundation statement and commitments to equity policy implementation states that each school has a responsibility to educate that reflects the diversity of its students and their life experiences. Singling out one group or topic area as too controversial and depending upon parent, guardian, caregiver discretion shifts this responsibility from the school to the parents, guardians, caregivers and fosters a poisoned environment contrary to the TDSB human rights policy. Did you get that? The board goes further, demonstrating a contempt for mums and dads that is, well, it's breathtaking. And I quote, "What is gender equity education? The TDSB is committed to supporting all students. Studies show that families begin to treat their children differently based on gender almost from the moment of birth. Educators are influential through their approach towards raising students' awareness of gender stereotypes and barriers at a very early stage in children's education. Together, educators and students can move from awareness to understanding and from understanding to eliminating gender barriers wherever they may be found." And the barriers that are apparently causing so much pain and destruction and war and tears and bad food and missed episodes of Modern Family are to be found in, yes, you guessed it, the family. The poor buggers who are paying such high taxes so that empty-headed extremists can try to indoctrinate those families' children with vile and bitter propaganda. Quote again, "Gender is a primary regulator of classroom social interactions. Children actively take up what they have learned about gender roles from parents, guardian, caregivers, television, religion, etc., and use this often contradictory information to control each other's behaviour." Did you notice the other repugnant influences? Religion. Mum, dad, church, bad. Radical homosexual nut bars, good. I've said it before, and I will say it again. There are myriad good teachers, many good schools, but they will always exist, whatever the system. I mean, quality will rise. We don't need public education. Scrap it. Scrap public education. Give the money back to the parents. Give the money back to the taxpayers and let them decide where they send their children. If there is enough support for a gender-free sexual circus high school, so be it. They're our children, not yours. It's our money, not yours. It's our country, not yours. You see that? That was impressive. Chrisanity there. First time we've used that one because Chris Sims is here every Monday. She's in Ottawa and she's wonderful and she's expecting a baby. Oh,
yes.
Yes. Oh, my golly, my voice.
more of me. Look out, world. Yeah.
God, I could compete in the swimming as a Chinese. Anyway, let's move on from that. Now, we need to discuss the fact that actually, and it's a segue from you being pregnant, you should not be allowed to raise your child, certainly not to influence your child in any way, because the Toronto District School Board, now we discussed this originally when it broke, but now there's more to the story. They've said that gender is an artificial construct and that kids must be taken out of the environment where parents or churches teach them there are men and women. And it goes further, it's quite sinister. Someone apparently asked a question at the school board, what about letting the parents know that they'll have these special indoctrination classes? And they said, no, you mustn't let the parents know, and they can't send a note, and they can't take their children out of it. They have to sit there and be told there's no such thing as gender. How about that, Ms. Sims?
Well, it fits in perfectly with that co-parenting hogwash that we all heard out of the Kitchener-Waterloo Regional School District back during the Jesse Sansone case, when we asked them, do you feel badly about what you did to this family? And they said, well, we co-parent, meaning the school board, the teachers, the administrators, probably the secretaries at the school. So it's not really that surprising, but it is alarming. It's interesting. They actually used the term poisoned environment. Now, quite often we'll, explain it that way for people who are pro-homeschooling or who want alternative classes or who, frankly, are just worried about the public school system and the way that they're influencing our children, aside from actually teaching them anything. But no, right in this document that they have on Blazing Cat Fur, they say there's a poisoned environment at home that could lead them into gender stereotyping. And I'd like to know what that means. Does that mean letting boys be boys and run around and shoot guns? Does that mean that you're not allowed to give your girl a Barbie doll? Is that gender stereotyping?
Yep.
Well, it's just, I can't imagine something more offensive to parents than to say, we know better. I mean, should we just schedule our C-sections and then hand it over to the state the moment the baby is born? I mean, this is what really gets people's backs up, and people wonder why they're looking for alternatives like homeschool or like religious schools.
So they actually describe the family. People need to know this because, look, we have 4 children. I was a bit uncomfortable with stereotyping. Play with what you want to play with.
Sure.
What tends to happen? I mean, that the boys did play with soldiers, and you can't really buy toy guns, but I would import them illegally from the United States, and they didn't kill anybody. The girls didn't play with dolls that much. They just did what they wanted to do. But to be told that as a family you're part of a poisoned environment by people, we have to emphasize here, who generally do not have children. I mean, there's a strong militant homosexual influence. I don't mean just general gay people. I mean a militant homosexual influence within this group of people.
And that they want to stamp out gender. And what that means for people who don't understand the difference. Because back when I first, started understanding university courses and that, I had to have the difference explained to me. To them, gender is a concept, meaning you're born and you feel a certain way. It's not that you're male or female by sex, by genitalia. It's that you feel that you're a man or a woman, or you identify with the masculine or feminine part of the spectrum. And they say that that is arbitrary and it's something that just comes from within you. And actually, Michael, if you can believe it or not, some people take it to the extreme in university to say that the actual physical sex is something that you determine. Like you don't actually have the secondary sex characteristics and genitals that you have, that is something that is somehow forced out of you by sheer act of will. It's a strange situation for many parents who are trying to grapple with this, and I'm wondering, who does the Toronto District School Board have in mind? Do they have people like toddlers in tiaras in mind? When
they could do. But I think the camera went off me for a moment, but stay with me because I just want to...
Yeah.
No, I do have them.
I'm pregnant. Don't know how that happened. Right.
That applies to race as well. I mean, I know this for a fact. I don't want to be too specific here, but that race is also people, they're very mediocre. I mean, really, they're dunderheads, most of them, and they keep talking about construct. Everything is a construct.
Right.
There are some biological realities. There may be people who are uncomfortable being what they are. There may be men who find men attractive. That's something very different. This is saying that you're simply not a man. I mean, it's very insulting, I would think, to say to a man who's gay, you're not really a man. No, you're a man. You're attracted to other men. That's something entirely different. But how worrying is this? Because surely the massive teachers and even the massive teaching bureaucrats are not going to embrace this sort of crap.
No, but what happens when there's a complaint and then maybe if that teacher upholds it and then they're disciplined? Look what happened to that teacher out in Alberta when he was told, you can't give zeros even if the students don't bother handing in their homework. The guy's practically fired. So, if it really gets down to it, it's either your job or you're going to uphold this diktat, it's alarming, even though, like you say, most teachers won't want to do something like this. Interesting you brought up race. I'm curious to know, the Toronto District School Board is the same school board that allows that mosque to be set up in the cafeteria and for menstruating girls to be set to the back of the cafeteria. Is that not severe gender lines? Wow. Or do they only pick and choose what they think of as gender stereotyping? It's very concerning to many people. And, from the Jesse Sansoni story, Michael, we get so many emails. It's about the co-parent comment. That really set off people's alarm bells. And I think people are onto them. But the question is, how do you reform it?
Well, the hypocrisy, this Chick-fil-A story, the mayor of Boston, who said he doesn't want any Chick-fil-A restaurant to exist in Boston because they dared to say that adultery was wrong. They weren't even talking about homosexuality, that marriage should be permanent and you remain faithful. It's the same man who opened up an Islamic center where one of the leaders of the center said, I'm not sure if gay people should be killed by being burnt to death or pushed off a tall building. So the hypocrisy is everywhere on these issues. One of the things I find most worrying here is this idea that don't tell the parents what we're doing. They know how offensive it is, and so we mustn't let the parents find out. But I'm afraid with things like Sun News and so on, the parents are going to find out.
Yes, they will. And Blazing Catford did an excellent job, like you said in your monologue, again, of bringing this to light. But parents do need to know. Question your children. Look at the stuff that they're bringing home. Sift through their backpacks, because you're right. They're trying to get past a very watchful guardian or gatekeeper here. And unless you're on top of it, they're going to teach them whatever they want. And actually, when I speak with some newer teachers, they've gone through teachers college and, they've fully immersed, even if they have the best of intentions, they still say, oh, well, you need that proper socialization. And sometimes, parents don't teach them the right stuff. And that's our job, to straighten all that out. So even with these well-meaning young people, they still have this attitude. And you're right, a lot of them don't have children themselves. So I don't think they understand how sacrosanct some of these issues are.
Yeah. Oh, teachers training colleges, some fine people still teaching in them, and most of the people who go in them have a very good heart. They want to do the right thing.
Of course.
But I know the one in Toronto, for example, I know a woman who went through this. She's an immigrant woman, single mum, happens to be Catholic, and she's reading this garbage about gender construct. But she's intelligent enough to know she has to give the right answers, because if she doesn't, she will never be able to have a job as a teacher. Great pleasure having you on the show, as always. Thank you, my dear.
Thank you, Michael.
Standing up for parents, that is the topic of tonight's Byline. Being a parent is a tough job. It's one that doesn't come with a training manual. And despite how many books are written by experts on the best way to raise a child, each family, well, they all come with their own particular set of joys and challenges. When I became a parent, I never once thought that fighting back against the state would be one of my jobs, but it is increasingly becoming that way. And I never really thought that one of my main opponents would be the educational system. My co-parents.
We do work hand in hand with these families because we co-parent.
As I said when we first brought you those shocking comments as part of the Jesse Sansone story, I have one co-parent, my wife, and I have never relinquished any parental rights to a school official or any other state actor. Look, there's plenty of good teachers. I know some of them. Some teach my kids, some are friends, some are neighbors, but for all the good ones out there, there's enormous damage being done by the professional bureaucrats in the education system and the teachers' college. Let's call them the educrats. These people really do think they are co-parent of your child and believe that their way of doing things should trump whatever you teach your kids at home. We've talked before about the radical sex ed agenda being pushed in Ontario. In Toronto's school system, it's already there. And while you might think, hey, look, I live in Bridgewater, that's a world away from Toronto. Well, believe me, unless you challenge this, it will show up in your school. In the Toronto District School Board's Marxist booklet on challenging homophobia and heterosexism, there is a question and answer section for teachers. One of the questions is whether parents should be alerted when controversial topics are discussed. The answer, of course, is no, because the book says singling out one group or topic area as too controversial and depending upon parent, guardian, caregiver discretion shifts responsibility from the school to the parents, guardians, caregivers, and fosters a poisoned environment contrary to the TDSB human rights policy. So letting parents know what might happen, what might be taught, fosters a poisoned environment. Well, that's what the educrats think of you, because you are an uneducated rube and must be brought into line with their way of thinking. In the name of respecting differences and fostering tolerance, they will keep you in the dark because they fear that you are probably intolerant. They just want to make sure your kid gets the right information before you can poison them. And just in case you've already poisoned them, the educrats will try and undo what you teach your children. Let's imagine for a moment that you believe in the silly notion that boys and girls are different. That's crazy, right? Well, if you've taught your kids that, they'll undo it. Here's a gem from the Toronto District School Board's Gender Equity Guide. It was uncovered by the blogger Blazing Cat Fur. Here's the quote. The TDSB is committed to supporting all students. Studies show that families begin to treat their children differently based on gender almost from the moment of birth. Well, that sounds fair enough. Many families do treat boys and girls differently because they are different. I have 2 boys and 2 girls at home. I can vouch for this. I'm also a boy. I'm married to a woman. I have a mother. I have a father, brother, sister. I can say that boys and girls are different, but not to the educrats. And if you've done anything to make your kids think the boys and girls are different, well, they'll just undo it. Here's more from the guide. Educators are influential through their approach toward raising students' awareness of gender stereotypes and barriers at a very early age in children's education. Together, educators and students can move from awareness to understanding and from understanding to eliminating gender barriers wherever they may be found. They want diversity and tolerance, except for your views. Your views must match theirs, and if they do not, the school will teach your children the proper way. Which brings me back to this guy.
We do work hand in hand with these families because we co-parent.
That was not a slip of the tongue. That's how these people view the world. The new school year is coming. Are you ready to surrender your children to their real parents, the educrats? Do you know what the educrats will be teaching? Are you ready to fight back? Parents are their child's first educators. School boards need to remember that and back off. But chances are it means you will have to stand up and be counted, or it won't happen. And that's the byline. Joining me now for more on this is Dave Quist. He's with the Institute for Marriage and Family Canada. Dave, we've talked about this co-parent idea before. Increasingly, I look at that, and any idea that I should give the gentleman from Waterloo that originally said co-parent the benefit of the doubt is just slipping, because time and again you find documents, and some of them going back years, that show the educrats really do think that. Do you think there's an agenda at play here, a hidden agenda, you might say?
Absolutely. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that when we read some of those documents, when we hear people like your prelogues talked about, that there is an agenda here, that there's a group of people, the educrats as you've called them, that think that they know more, that they know better than us as parents of how to raise our children. I mean, just the simple fact of gender equity here, boys and girls are different. They learn differently, they rise differently, they mature at different rates. We should be treating them differently. That doesn't mean that we should be putting one over the other, but we should recognize what their differences are. Little boys are more physical. They use big muscle control better. They need to blow off some of that energy to learn better in the classroom. Little girls, for the most part, tend to learn quite differently. They tend to mentally mature at a different rate, usually ahead of boys, especially at those younger age groups. And so for educators to say we're going to treat them all the same, we know better than you as parents, that's just simply nonsense. That's not what the research tells us at all.
It reads like Marxist literature from the 70s that it has just never been blown away. Now, I said that I believe there are good teachers, and I think most teachers just want to do their job. But the problem is the educrats are the ones in control. The people with the radical ideas are the ones that rise up to the rank of school board superintendent in the District of Waterloo, that go on TV and say they're co-parents. They're the ones writing these documents for the Toronto District School Board or your school board in Bridgewater, Nova Scotia. I believe this is going to spread across the country. So what is a parent to do about this other than just pulling out of the system, which most people can't do?
Right. I think you're right. I think most teachers are actually quite good teachers, and they're there for the right purposes. They want to teach children. They want to help them grow and blossom and mature to be the best little people that they can be. But when we look at where the people are coming from, the educrats that put different policies in place, that shape how the entire system works, it binds those teachers into corners that they just simply can't get out of. You talk to many teachers and they say, the system is killing me. I just want to take my 20 or 25 or 30 grade 3s and I want to teach them their ABCs and how to write a story and how things work, and they're not being allowed to do that. What role can parents have here? Parents can be actively involved. They should be involved in their parent school environment. It's called
the parent school council or whatever
Absolutely.
they call it.
Know what's going on. They should meet with their teacher, their child's teacher, on a regular basis. Certainly there's formalized times throughout the school year when there's those parent-teacher interviews and meetings and things like that. Parents should take advantage of those and be involved. They should actually take advantage and just simply meet the teacher periodically and say, here's where my values are, here's what we teach our children at home. Will you be supporting these things, or is it going to be contrary? And establish a relationship with the teacher, with the principal if necessary, to say, contrary to what we just saw on the documentation from the Toronto School Board, when you're teaching these things, I would like to be involved. I would like to know what's going on. And it doesn't have to be just sex education. We think that as a hot button item. But there are many other moral value statements that are being made increasingly within the school system.
My eldest was in grade 6 last year, and they started getting into all kinds of political things, and it was all from the one side.
Sure.
It was all from the one side. That was the first experience we had with a teacher. We were going, whoa,
right.
Hold on. Some intervention did help, but not completely.
And so communication helps out a great deal. There are times when, rather than that schools overriding the parents are going to have to step in and say, little Billy or Johnny or whoever it is, they're going to come out of this class. We're just going to pull them out for this afternoon, or when you're teaching this session, we have some different ideas on this. And if it can't happen for some reason that you don't know what's going on, one, I would say, this concerns me a great deal and we need to know what's going on. But secondly, if something comes up and there's a discussion around the dinner table with the kids and so on, you need to use those as teaching moments at home. That's the role of mom and dad to say, well, that's one point of view. Here's a different point of view, and you've seen as we live our life out in this family, this is how we support each other, and this is what we believe. And I think that's very important.
All right, some sage advice. Dave, thanks very much for dropping by today.